So, Jurassic World Rebirth. I was wary of this one going in. And for good reason, I think. One would be the 3D. Jurassic World 1 was a decent conversion, and Jurassic World's Fallen Kingdom and Dominion were among the worst recent conversions, which was pretty stunning. I mean, like, stunningly bad, not only in lack of depth, but also in blatant errors. The other note of concern was the story. Like, what story? I mean, the Jurassic World trilogy relied heavily on nostalgia and callbacks and things of that nature, and it was very similar to the Star Wars sequel trilogy in that regard, and using that as a crutch, and also in not knowing exactly where it was going story-wise, and leaving loose ends, and really leaving things open at the end, but not in a good way. As it came to be expected, the end result was that not only was this revamped park called Jurassic World, but that name was taken literally, in that the dinosaurs now got out into the world and became wild animals. But it wasn't resolved in a satisfying way in Dominion, which was a very bloated movie, or offer satisfying explanations. So, seeing the trailer for this movie, which didn't offer anything, as far as I'm concerned, for a reason to even exist in the first place, I was just basically disinterested, but still wanted to give it a chance. And I was pleasantly surprised in both aspects, both the story and the 3D. So, first of all, the 3D is a definite improvement. I mean, that's not saying much considering the last two conversion jobs they did, but this one was on general standards for modern 3D conversions. It was medium depth the vast majority of the time, so it was very solid in that regard, and definitely the preferred way to see it, and hopefully Turbine gets to release it on Blu-ray at some point. However, it's also worth noting that it doesn't appear to have been filmed for 3D, in that they took special care and effort to bring out the most of what 3D could be. The framing of the shots, you could tell, had no 3D sensibility. What could have been pop-outs was obstructed by the screen frame. I could only remember one pop-out that maybe lasted a couple frames. It was when let's call it a dart was shot towards the camera roughly, but that was sort of incidental. At least they did take advantage of that brief opportunity, and the conversion artist made that pop out of the screen ever so briefly. But this is not a pop-out movie, but the parallax, the distance between the layers that they rotoscoped, is indeed good strength, and I didn't notice any errors, and there were plenty of opportunities for them. We're talking some particles, but mostly lots of small, skinny sticks and twigs, and plenty of foliage. Plenty of room for errors that could easily have crept in, and I didn't notice a one, so that turned out very well. They did what they could with the source material and made a quality conversion. And like I said about the story, I was happy with it. I was pleasantly surprised, and it was an enjoyable movie. And unlike before, where you had to rely on nostalgia or past elements, tie-ins, callbacks, or the usual trend with sequels and reboots to try to make it seem as if this was always meant to be. This is where it all leads. No, none of that. It's just a standalone, fun story. It doesn't have to exist per se for the purposes of lore, and that's a big problem that's crept into many movies nowadays, where it's all about the destination and not about the journey. And that's what I enjoyed about Jurassic Park 3. It wasn't very popular at the time, still isn't popular with a lot of folks. But Jurassic Park 3, from around the turn of the millennium, was a very tight story that didn't take itself too seriously. It was just a fun, a little jaunt, little adventure that took place in this world. It had interesting characters that you were engaged with, and yes, it did add to the mythology, but in a way that didn't feel pretentious or unnecessary. And that's basically what Jurassic World Rebirth is. And I found it kept getting more interesting as it kept going. If you're looking for that nostalgia hit, this is not it. What I really liked about this movie was the pacing of it. It was not extreme and intense. It was very conversation focused. I mean, of course, it has a lot of action in it, obviously. And the opening scene might give you the wrong impression, because it's the way they cut that was basically making you think you're going into like a straight up horror slasher movie. but after that opening title, which probably is just made to catch people's attention, it's very slow burn, character driven, and it just happens to be in the Jurassic Park continuity. I'm not sure how I feel totally about the introduction of this new-ish hybrid dinosaur, the D-Rex. I mean, it was interesting. That was fun. I mean, it added some extra runtime towards the end, but I think the movie could have done just as well without it. Just the very appearance of this dinosaur, his head looks straight up like a alien, and the limbs just don't make sense, having 6 limbs, like an insect or something, while still being a dinosaur. Basically, it just doesn't make anatomical sense, and it that stretches things into like extreme sci-fi territory, where, I mean, you're suspending your belief already, but that's a bit much. Still, I think it worked, but just I think it could have worked maybe a little better if they just cut that whole subplot. And that includes the opening scene, which set it up, but wasn't really necessary for the rest of the whole story. And even the way they had the plot progression of that opening scene was very clumsy. So yeah, if they cut that whole thing, I think it would have been much more grounded, like a lot of the movie was, in fact. And when something's more grounded, you take it more seriously and invest yourself more. And in fact, one of the best scenes in the whole movie, maybe, was the scene with the good old-fashioned T-Rex. It was just a great, on the edge of your seat action scene, not over the top, contrasted with the slower pacing of the surrounding scenes. In other words, suspense over action and horror. So yeah, Jurassic World Rebirth. The name, I don't know why it's called that, or if the name even really matters. A lot of the times the name doesn't matter, just like Dominion doesn't really matter. But it fleshes out some of the loose ends, like what happens, the real implications of dinosaurs being out worldwide, and what eventually happened. So that's kind of addressed towards the beginning, which I'm thankful for. Got that out of the way, which had annoyed me since last time. And I was pleasantly surprised and enjoyed it a lot, so go check it out in 3D.